Hey guys, welcome back, Fume here. So I'm going to give you my initial impressions of Dragons Dogma 2 after clocking in at almost 40 hours so far. And I know you're thinking at 40 hours this should be a review, and while I agree, I haven't even started the story quests in the second region, so this will just be my impressions so far. I also played a bunch of the first game, so I went into this understanding how the basic mechanics like vocations, pawns, combat, and all the things like that work. I think between console and PC, I clocked in about 100 or so hours in Dragons Dogma Dark Arisen, which is the re-released version of the first game with Bitter Black Island expansion. So I wouldn't call myself a veteran, but I'm a seasoned player in the way of Dragons Dogma. Right off the rip, I want to get it out of the way. Dragons Dogma 2 has had some controversy at launch for two good reasons, with one of them being pretty much 100% ignorable, and that's the microtransactions. So Capcom has done this for years, and that's not an excuse. But, I mean, look at games like Resident Evil 2 Remake and Resident Evil 4 Remake. There's literally microtransactions to buy in-game unlockables. So I just pretended they didn't exist and it didn't affect me. But what did affect me was the bad performance, and this is on all platforms, not just PC where I played. So I have a medium high-end machine with a 6800 XT, i9 990K, and 32 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM. And I play exclusively at 1440p. And the performance in the open world was actually fine for the most part. It was when I went into major cities and the NPC population would cause my frames to drop below 30 FPS, which is just unacceptable for my specs. And a lot of it comes from the geometry of the NPCs being CPU intensive, because I noticed in cities, my usage goes up to 99% on my CPU. So if Capcom addresses the city performance, then I personally wouldn't have any complaints about that issue anymore. But lower spec machines, even around recommended and lower than recommended, will probably still struggle. This can just be addressed yourself if you go on a killing spree, but I would totally recommend against this. Now that we got those controversies out of the way, let's talk about the basics, and we'll begin with vocations. So starting off after character creation, you choose your vocation, which is another name for the starting class, and that's between fighter, thief, mage, and archer. You know, the bread and butter basic classes in RPGs. But then you have more advanced classes like magic archer, warrior, trickster, etc. One thing to know is Itsuno, the creator of the game, said that each class is its own thing. So don't think of warrior as an evolution of fighter or sorcerer as an evolution of mage. They each bring their own uses to the table. For example, a sorcerer is purely high damage AoE DPS, while a mage provides buffs, heals, and DPS. One thing to also understand is there is a player level and a vocation level. Player level comes from experience points, which are rewarded from quests and combat, while vocation level goes up from DP, which is only awarded from combat. The max player cap for player level is 999, and the max level for vocations is 9, with player levels awarding upgrades to stats like health, stamina, strength, dex, and vocation level will have like new abilities, passives, and actives that can be unlocked. So far, I've played fighter and thief to vocation level 9, archer to level 4, and mystic spear hand to level 3, and they have all played very differently. Combat feels fluid with very, unique playstyles, and every class feeling unique. For example, fighter's job is to take aggro and tank hits, while the mage deals DPS and heals, as the thief climbs the enemy and unleashes a fury of attacks on the enemy's weak point, while the warrior charges up his attacks to stagger the enemy, knock it down, and go for a critical riposte. Like I said, each class has their own roles to play. There is no lock-on for combat, so it takes a minute to get used to, but it does not feel bad by any means after about 15 minutes. Classes like mages and archers can manually aim their attacks, and the game does have a soft lock-on. So if you're facing in the general direction of an enemy, it will attack them. So just trust me, it feels good. You're gonna like it. Next thing I want to talk about is the pawn system, and that is pawn as in P-A-W-N, and what they essentially are is your main character's sidekick. You create your own pawn in the character creator just like you did your own character, and they're with you through most of the adventure unless you kill them and don't summon them back from a rift stone. But you can choose a class, give them gear, they talk to you and make comments throughout your journey. It's like having your best bud with you as a companion through your entire RPG journey. The cool twist of the pawn system is that you can call upon other real players' pawns at a rift stone, which are these big rocks that have carvings on the front of them, and you can find these and repair these, or they're just in cities scattered throughout the open world. When you go to a rift stone, you go into this pawn portal area, and pawns all gather around, and you can choose 2 to take besides your own. And like I said, these are main pawns created by other real players. so they are all very unique, but Capcom did sprinkle in their own for early reviewers, and you'll probably never see those unless you're playing offline. Another cool thing is if another player uses your pawn in their game and they find a dungeon or loot you haven't found, your pawn will bring back that knowledge. And quest knowledge too, and the same goes for summoning other players' pawns. They will take their knowledge of the stuff they've done with their masters, which are the other players, and tell you about it, and they guide you to new things like quests, combat, and items. Pawn AI in the combat's pretty decent. I haven't found myself getting frustrated with them, or even during open world exploration. They won't run out or jump off cliffs or do stupid things. The only annoying thing they really do is repeat the same lines of dialogue over and over, but if you get annoyed, there is an option in the settings to shut them up. On to exploration in the world in general. The actual map is pretty big, and there are essentially two major biomes: a lush forest with cliffs and waterfalls, and then a rocky crag desert with vegetation and streams. They're both unique in appearance, but monster types are essentially the same, but with reskins. Which, okay, if that's how they decided this ecosystem is, who am I to tell them differently? But I did find it hurt the fact of enemy variety during the day, which obviously changes at night when skeletons and zombies come out. But before that, I want to talk about travel. One thing to know about the game is fast travel is far and few between until the end game. You essentially have fast travel points called port crystals. There are a couple of permanent ones placed in the world by the devs, but then there are port crystals that you can carry around and place yourself to make your own fast travel points. Throw it down, you can come and go as you please as long as you have a fairy stone, and the port crystals that you place in the world, you can pick back up and move elsewhere. Early game, the way you'll mainly travel is by ox cart and your own 2 feet. So ox cart has preset destinations from one city to another, and you end up paying the driver, hop on, and can doze off. One cool mechanic of the ox carts is they can be attacked, right? So if you hop on, doze off, sometimes the game will wake you up mid-journey, and the ox cart's being attacked by goblins or wolves. So you can either help by fighting them off, and then once they're fought off, hop back on and go to your destination, or just watch the ox cart be destroyed and then travel on foot. Traveling on foot is my personal favorite because you can really explore and go off into random caves and dungeons to get the good exploration, and you can fight like the world bosses like dragons, ogres, trolls, and griffins. When traveling on foot, one thing you really need to pay attention to is the day and night cycle, because it plays a huge role in exploration. Just like any game, the world changes from day to night, and the world of Dragons Dogma actually doesn't have a moon, just stars in the sky. It's a lore thing, so it's very dark at night. This is where the lantern comes in to help you see, and when it's nighttime, that's when things can get like really scary. Undead come out, skeletons come alive, and many other night creatures I don't want to spoil will mess your day up. Early in the game, until probably like level 15 to 20, you want to avoid nighttime. At least that's my personal recommendation, so you don't get messed up. And this can be done by like sleeping at inns, waiting on a bench, making camp out in the wilderness. Usually you'll want to sleep at an inn, your house, or make camp rather than waiting, because waiting won't heal your temporarily lowered health, which just naturally lowers from playing as you take damage. So over time, as you take damage, your health bar will whittle and will stay that way until sleeping. This is to encourage it feeling like a journey, and so you go back to town, empty stock of things, upgrade your vocation skills, and sleep at an inn or your house before you go back out to adventure. And what this will do is it will restore your temporarily lost health. But if you're mid-journey, you can make camp in the wilderness. There are fire pits scattered all throughout the world, and as long as you have a camping pack on you, you can rest up instead of needing to sleep at an inn or your house. I actually found myself never doing this because camping packs are heavy as hell, but I did just find out you can have all your pawns in your party carry your stuff, and even if you dismiss them or they die, all the items or gear you gave them will just go to your storage, so it's not lost. So if you don't want to have to go back to a storage option all the time, just give items to your pawns so you won't be over encumbered. Also, little tip, before you make camp at a campsite, clear out all the enemies around you, because if you don't, they'll attack you in the middle of the night, and when they do, this destroys your camping kit. Let's talk about a few issues I take with the games besides the ones mentioned at the start of the video. And the first being that the new equipment you get, there's literally like no reason to hold on to older equipment other than fashion uses. Weapons and armor don't really have unique properties other than like the permanently enchanted elemental damage ones, which you should keep, but most loot is just forgotten about because besides appearance and damage, there is nothing really unique about one sword to the next. So there's really nothing unique to get attached to. The other big issue is enemy variety. I found myself fighting the same 4 monsters over and over. Goblins, wolves, harpies, and bandits, with skeletons and zombies being added to the mix at night. This wouldn't be an issue if its 12-year-old prequel didn't have almost triple the normal enemy types. Yeah, there are different variants of these enemies, and the combat is so good that I personally ignore it, but it's definitely a step back from the previous game. Before I wrap this up, I just want to touch on the story quickly. It's not that good from what I've experienced, and I've only played the first area's story quests. So I'm now heading into the desert area, Batal. The overarching story is interesting, but I don't feel like relationships with characters or really even depth of characters has gone into much. They kind of throw a character at you for the main quest or two, and then they're forgotten. Like I said, I haven't beaten the game, but I've had much more interesting times with the side quests. Now, what do I think of Dragons Dogma 2? It's a fantastic game for newcomers to experience regardless of the steep learning curve, but returning players might be a little disappointed by the lack of new content added to the gameplay loop. If you're new or just wanted more of the same with a shiny, fresh coat of paint, Dragons Dogma 2 is for you. If you're a veteran player that wanted the good additions from the Dark Arisen version of the first game to be built upon, with the bad being fixed, well, you're gonna be a little unhappy. I found myself somewhere in between, noticing the issues but not letting them ruin my experience. Regardless, I think everyone should at least try to play it because overall it's a decent ARPG and I'm having a blast. Guys, I appreciate you watching. If you liked the content, please like, share, and subscribe. I also upload a weekly news video covering all the video game industry news on Sundays. So if you like to stay up to date on all that stuff, please tune in. I'm out of here. Have a good one, guys.